Hello, anatomy colleagues. This is Dr. Alsup, and in this first orientation video, we are going to focus on the structure of an anatomy session. Now, this is going to focus really on what do you actually need to do? What is pre-work? Where do you find those resources? What are you supposed to do for the lab? Those types of things. But we will have a series of other videos that will cover specifics in terms of the lab, uh, specifics in terms of lab safety, the anatomical donations program, those types of things. So this is just the first video. Do make sure that you watch the others because they'll give you a lot of feedback in terms of some of the other areas. Now, anatomy is going to be unique in many ways, but actually not so much in others. We're going to be on quizzes and final exams like other areas. Um, Anatomy is truly foundational for future clinicians, as you probably can imagine. You're going to be talking about anatomy structures constantly. So this is really important to actually understand where they're located, but through our curriculum and learning methodologies, we also promote teamwork, things like professionalism and accountability, but also really importantly, independent and longer term learning. We're also going to be an area where students greatly anticipate, but that anticipation may include notable anxiety regarding what an anatomy session is and what the dissection lab is, and realize that's a very, very typical feeling. So the goal of this particular video is to talk about what you need to do and where you can find those resources. Now, every single anatomy session starts with pre-work. Pre-work is key, pre-work is important, and most importantly, pre-work is not optional. It must be completed and it absolutely will be assessed on. And this pre-work introduces you to key high-yield anatomical concepts that will allow you to better engage in the laboratory and or the extended reality resources. And this is an important part of the flipped classroom aspect of the anatomy curriculum. So you'll engage with these learning objectives first, and then you will come in person to lab to actually engage with the anatomical structures, see them in that three-dimensional context, actively locate and understand where these structures are. Now, this pre-work can be done in one of two ways. You can either read through the written learning objective text, or by popular demand by your upper class person colleagues, we also produced mini videos of the learning objectives. So this will have an anatomy faculty member kind of teaching through those concepts, similar to what you would have with your more didactic lectures. Now, you can choose either or. There's no real need to do both of these unless you want to, because they're covering the same materials and concepts. So you're going to choose what works best with your learning style. Additionally, for each learning objective, we provide a summary slide that focuses in on those biggest picture, highest yield concepts that you will likely find helpful for your studying. So again, there's nothing new from the videos or the written learning objectives in a summary slide. It's just pared down to some of those biggest picture, highest yield concepts. And here is an example on the bottom right that gives you an idea of what a summary slide is. Now, I've heard from colleagues in past years that they would do their pre-work, so they would either watch or read through the learning objectives. But then from there on out, they really use these summary slides as the major means to study for the quizzes and final exams. Now, all this pre-work material can be found on the BlueLink website. We have a link here in the upper right hand. And this is your hub for all things anatomy this year. If you Google UMich BlueLink, this will pop up. This is something I highly, highly suggest you bookmark because, again, you will be using this throughout the whole year. Almost all of your resources are located here. So let's quickly go to the website. All right, excellent. And this will bring you to the home page. You see this page is specific for M1 Foundational Anatomy. And you can see all the sessions that we will have throughout the year. We have a lot to learn, right? Duodenum, pancreas, abdominal aorta, orbit, and eye. We have much to do. But if you click on the specific session that you're preparing for, so let's just pretend we're getting prepared for the lungs and ventilation pathway. You can see that there is a treasure trove of resources here. You will have supplementary resources. These are really great for working through and preparing for the quizzes, final exams, and the practical. But when we're talking about the required pre-work, this is the learning objectives. So if you click on the learning objectives, you will see that the first thing is a embedded YouTube playlist that has those videos here. So you can you can watch it through the BlueLink site, or you can click here. It'll take you directly to YouTube, and it'll show you the playlist there. And then if you click on the written learning objectives, this is where you have it all written out with images, of course. And you can read it directly on the website, or you can click on this PDF in order to be able to download these written learning objectives. Now, if you're back on this main learning objective page, you will see that you can click and find the summary slides here that can be downloaded, as well as all of the video slides that were used in these learning objective videos. So this would be more comprehensive. And then at the end of each of the learning objective slides, you would have the summary slide as well. So this encompasses all the lecture slides as well as the summary slides. This one just has the summary slide. So it looks like there were about 6 learning objectives for the lungs, and there is a summary slide for each one of those. All right, excellent. So that gives you an idea of what to expect for the learning objectives. And so that, again, this is specifically what's required for the pre-work. We'll come back to the laboratory in a moment. Let's return to the PowerPoint. Okay, so I'm not done talking about pre-work, though. It is really key and important for us here. So let's talk a little bit about when you're going to do the pre-work. Well, this is really up to you. You can determine a strategy that works best for you. If you work best at 11:30 p.m., that's great. If you work best earlier on during business hours, that's fine too. What is most important is that this needs to be done before a session. That makes sense. It is pre-work. It should be done before the actual session. So just figure it out in terms of what's going to work best for you. I would allot an hour to an hour and a half to complete the pre-work. It will definitely be more like an hour and a half towards the beginning of the year, the beginning of the anatomy curriculum. It always takes a little time to ease into this basically new language you are learning through anatomy. So it often takes a little longer towards the beginning of the year. So I promise you, as we move throughout the year, you'll be using terms like medial and lateral without having to think through that definition very much. But if you don't have an anatomy background, you need to learn what those words mean first, and that takes a little bit more time. So you're definitely going to need to allot about an hour and a half towards the beginning. If you find it's taking you longer than that amount of time, please do reach out to anatomy faculty and we can talk through strategies to move through the material with a bit more efficiency. We are always here to help and we absolutely want to. So please, please reach out early and often. The next step in an anatomy session is to complete the readiness assessment. So the two best things I need you to understand here are that, again, these need to be completed before each session. So allot yourself enough time to not only do the pre-work in terms of understanding those concepts, but also to do this readiness assignment. So this is due before 8 a.m. on session day because sessions start 8 a.m. on the dot. If you do it at 7:45 a.m., that's up to you as long as it gets done before 8 a.m. The other major thing that I want you to understand is that all students need to complete the readiness assignments, even those that are not dissecting that day. So just because you're not going into the laboratory that morning, you're still responsible for doing the pre-work as well as the readiness assignments. You do have that time allotted in your overall schedule. So all students complete these, not just those that are dissecting. Now, readiness assignments are not found on the BlueLink website. They are found on Canvas under the assignments portion there, similar to your other assignments and other parts of the curriculum. All right, we have reached dissection, which is a primary way that we engage not only with anatomical concepts, but also identification and that three-dimensionality that is so inherent in anatomy. We could talk to you all day about what structures, where they should be and how they should look, but it is a totally different learning method to experience this yourself and actually find and identify these structures in person and through your own hard work. This is a very intentional teaching method, and while you and your colleagues will be doing the work, you will always have a trusty anatomy faculty member not too far away to help guide you if you get lost. Okay. Now, one team will dissect per session. So either team one is dissecting that day or team two, not both. Okay? Now, we further subdivide the teams into A and B teams. So only a fourth of the class will be scheduled in a 2-hour time slot. This allows for more direct time with dissection that would not be possible with a larger lab group. It also allows for a smaller student to faculty ratio at any given time. And Dr. Fox will talk through some of the lab specifics in another video, but it's important for you to understand your team number and letter. You will either be team 1A, team 1B, team 2A, or team 2B. All right, so figure out which one of these four you are assigned to. We pay very careful attention to make sure that we switch the teams up, both in terms of dissections, but also in terms of time slots. So say team 2 is dissecting today. Team 2B is going to be in from 8 to 10, and team 2A is going to be in from 10 to 12. Note, the next time that team 2 comes into the lab, these times will switch. All right? So team 2B won't always be dissecting at 8 to 10 all year. They could be dissecting at 10 to 12. So it's really important to watch that Canvas calendar to best understand when you will be dissecting. That's something that always happens, is that somebody that came in and dissected at 10 to 12 on one session forgets that it switches and they come in really late for a session. And you don't want to do that. So make sure that you have your Canvas calendar handy and that you can understand those things. All right. Now, if you are not dissecting, does that mean you're not doing anything? Absolutely not. That's a good time to review your pre-work, make sure you feel good about that. But also we have created an XR link or a virtual lab experience for students. And I also want to note that we will have time to review your donor on your next dissection day. So say you are not the team that is dissecting the abdominal wall for that session. The next time that you come in, so that next session, we have built in time for you to be able to review the structures that were dissected that week before, okay? So we intentionally build lab manuals to be short enough to allow for you to have time to review the structures that you did not dissect. But you are able to experience these in a different context through this virtual lab experience. So why don't we look at those resources? Okay, so if you look at, so this was where the required pre-work was, the learning objectives. Over here, you'll have the required laboratory resources. First and foremost, you have the list of structures. The list of structures is our contract to you as to what you may be asked to identify on a practical. If it's not on this list, we won't ask you to identify it. And it literally is just a list here. If you are the dissecting group, you will be working through this lab manual, and you're free to look through this if you're in the non-dissecting group. So this is what you will have this up on the computers in the laboratory. And then if you are in the non-dissecting group, or if you are in the dissecting group and are studying, you can use this XR link or virtual lab. And as you can see here, there's going to be various stages of this virtual dissection. If we click on one. Stage 1, you will see that we have written out the list of structures for this stage. We have the 2D atlas images here. And then we have two other more interactive resources. The first is called Uptail, which is a software. You can use this by using either a web browser or VR goggles if you have those and you feel comfortable. And if you click on the Uptail, it will take you to this page for now. Eventually, I've heard that you are going to have to log into it with just your typical University of Michigan login. But as of right now, you would just click on the web. And you would see that you would have kind of a example of what the donor would look like. You can move this around. We'll also have specific questions here that you want to kind of work through. And there'll be various questions. You'll click on structures, etc. Also, if you continue to go down here, you will see that we have photogrammetric scans that are available for the resources. It takes always a second for it to load. But you can see that you can move this around. This would look similar to what it would look like in the laboratory. You can click on certain structures to get an idea of what is being labeled there. And these would be from the list of structures there. So there is a lot to work through. Then you would go back and you would work through stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, etc. as you move through these stages. All right, excellent. Let's return one more time to the PowerPoint. All right, and last but not least, let's talk about review sessions. So starting in block 3, we'll not have any in block 2 since we are not on the quizzes or the final exam in block 2. We'll talk more about that in the actual orientation day. But starting in block 3, anatomy faculty will have optional review sessions to allow for more direct teaching time for those that have clarification or specific questions on anything from that week's anatomy. So that could be from the learning objectives as well as structure identification based questions. In these sessions, we tend to have 5 to 6 pre-prepared questions on areas that we know are a bit more conceptually difficult to discuss as a group. And then we will have open time for other student questions. We will have a review session on a week that there's an anatomy session, as well as a review session on practical week. And again, this starts in block 3. You have an extremely dedicated group of 6 anatomy faculty who love to teach and look forward to working with you both in the lab, but also through these review sessions. All right, excellent. Thanks so much for listening. And if you have any questions regarding this material, please feel free to reach out. But also there are a few more short videos beyond here that may help answer some of those questions. So I hope you stay tuned for those. Thanks so much for your time and attention.